I'm Houston Dougharty, the Vice President for Student Affairs here at Hofstra, and I have the privilege of impacting students' lives in lots of ways, but probably most directly in the fact that I work with and help lead 18 different departments in the Division of Student Affairs, all of which are focused on the success, the well-being, and the involvement of Hofstra students. And those departments range from academic advising and career design and development to access services, campus recreation, counseling services, and residence life. So really, we think of the whole student, and we work hard to anticipate students' needs and to meet them as they find themselves challenged on campus, to provide the support they need. When I think about the most important leadership characteristics of current student affairs professionals, there are a few things that come to mind. First is, and I think foremost, is this notion of student-centeredness, of in all that we do having an intention about how what we're doing will impact students' lives. So that notion of student-centeredness is a really important characteristic. And in doing so, I also think it's important that we be empathetic. Having the characteristic of empathy is important because we always need to be thinking about the student experience from someone else's perspective, not just our own. It's important that you be able to collaborate. Being a collaborative person is really, really important because we are just part of the college experience. We need to be working closely with faculty, with other administrators, with student leaders, with folks off campus. That collaboration is a really, really important thing. And then the last two characteristics I'd mention are, number one, the ability to manage complexity. Our organizations are complex and our students' lives are complex. And being able to manage complexity is important. It's also important, I think, especially in this day and age, to be able to lead change. If there's one thing we can count on in student affairs, if there's one thing we can count on in higher education, it's that notion of change. So having the characteristic of a leader who can lead change is really important. I love connecting with students on campus, and in fact, it's why I do this work. I've been in higher education and student affairs for almost 40 years, and I think the root of my passion for this field is the ability to be with students, the ability to see what their experience is like and really see them live it, not just hear about it or not just read about it. So consequently, I sort of live by the notion of being present. I think there's no substitute for putting myself where they are. I can't sit in my office in Phillips Hall and expect to understand the student experience and expect students to come to me. I need to go hang out in the student center. I need to be in the Starbucks line. I need to go to a student senate meeting. I really love going to campus events. I hardly ever miss a men's or women's basketball game, for instance. I see every single play on campus and most dance concerts and a lot of musical concerts as well. It's that notion of being present in the places where students are, both casually, like the Starbucks line, but also intentionally at the events that they are producing or at places where I know that they will be active. I think that people embarking on a career in student affairs should imagine this career, and I would even call it a lifestyle, as a passport. And I mean not only a literal physical passport in that there are colleges and universities all over the world, and you can, in fact, take your career in student affairs and live in Alaska, and live in Guam, and live in New Rochelle. I mean, there are so many colleges and universities, 4,000 alone in the United States. I've been lucky to work at 8 different college campuses in 6 different states in my 40-year career. And I've loved the fact that I could work at small liberal arts colleges, huge state universities, and then finish my career at a place like Hofstra. So notion of seeing our career and our field as a passport, and not only in terms of where you can go, but what you can do. I oversee 18 different departments. Well, about half of those, I've actually worked in those departments. But there are others that I've learned about since I took this job. And that's a really cool thing about our field, is that the longer you're in the field and the higher you move up in an organization, the more you get to know and the more expertise you have. So it's that notion of a passport, both physically and in terms of what you can learn. When I think of the challenges or issues that will be impacting students in the future, there are two things that come to mind. One is the increased complexity of students' lives. If I think about when I started in this field 40 years ago, students' lives were simpler. If I think about when I went to college in the 70s, my life was simpler. Some of that was because our world was less complex. We didn't have the technology that we have now. We didn't have the knowledge that we have now, the exposure to ideas. Consequently, we do a lot more what I would call social work in student affairs because students' lives are so complex, both curricularly in terms of what they're studying, but also the families they come from and the socioeconomic issues they face and the impending issues about diversity and inclusion in our society. Their lives are more complex, and we need to be prepared to help them as they manage and try to be successful in their lives. The second thing that I would say is this notion of how technology is going to impact the future. And just coming out of this year where we had to shift to using technology, I think suggests to us that the future is hybrid. The future is not only an in-person, on-campus existence, which most of us in higher ed love, but also it's going to be infused with what we've learned about our technological capacity. And I think moving forward, we in student affairs are going to find ways to both help students be successful by being with them in person, but also being with them using technology. Already, many of our offices are shifted to, for instance, being able to offer exercise classes virtually, being able to have after-hours advising appointments online. These are things we weren't doing a year and a half ago, and I can only see that technology is going to make our lives increasingly different in the future.